Shalom. Shalom and welcome. Welcome to White Rose family. My name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I'm compelled to present before an awakening, set-apart nation, drawn by the Almighty Father Yahuah to Yahusha Mashyach. This is part of the Judgment, Warning, and Instructions playlist, my brothers and sisters. And today, according to the Gregorian calendar, it's March 5th, 2020. But this is the last month of our true year. And we are approaching the new year, O Yashar'al. In this segment of Judgment, Warnings, and Instructions, I want to bring to your attention outbreaks, weights, and measures. Something that I'm not hearing being presented before the Almighty Father's children, Yashar'al, consisting of both Hebrews and Gentiles, or Abrahym and Goym, who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, who are drawn by him to Yahusha Mashyach. But before I get into outbreaks, weights, and measures, my brothers and sisters, let me read the following. Warning and disclaimer: the information contained in White Rose family represent instructions and warnings to individuals who believe they are drawn by the Almighty Creator Yahuah to Yahusha Mashyach. The content presented centers around end-time realities. Please be advised this site is not intended for children under 16 years of age due to its content. By continuing forward, you agree to hold Symmanayah harmless of any influence and or actions that arise as a result of watching, listening, and reviewing the content presented. The views expressed do not reflect the owners, management, and or shareholders of this media platform. Please note that I am not affiliated with anyone or organization with similar names. On that note, my brothers and sisters, let's get into this segment. A segment to bring your attention on outbreaks, weights, and measures. Make no mistake, Yashar'al, there are multiple diseases, many diseases that are ramping up and killing people and causing sickness, disrupting the health. Among the children of Yashar'al, I want you to remember and keep in mind two things. That the scriptures tell us that he reigns on the just and the unjust. So that doesn't mean we are void of becoming sick. But the scriptures also tell us that these earthen vessels will go back to the dirt from which they come. The scriptures also tell us that it is more important that we seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, that our inward man will indeed and have indeed received everlasting life through Yahusha Mashyach. With that said, my brothers and sisters, there are some of us that will be spared of many of the diseases and plagues that are growing across the face of the earth. There are some of us that will be spared with the suffering that famine brings. There are some of us that will be spared in the wake, in the shadows, following economic collapse. Spared meaning how the Most High will direct our footsteps and guide us to weather the storm that is ahead of us. Yashar'al, with that said, there are those among us who are obedient that may serve the purpose of showing how we still cry out hallelujah, because we know in the plan of the Almighty Father, it is not about these earthen vessels, but about doing the will of the Almighty Father. It is about seeking his guidance. And there are some of us, my brothers and sisters, will face different extreme conditions, but there are instructions on how we are to respond. Imagine how one will be shocked if you're sick with a disease and dying physically, but you're still saying, I will yet praise the Almighty Father. I will yet love him. I will yet seek to do his will in spite of my condition. You see, these are some words that might indeed encourage another brother who is unlearned, undisciplined. But a brother drawn, they may be encouraged to still trust the Most High in spite of what is going on. Imagine those who are saying, hallelujah, I'm able to go forward as I am spared some of the catastrophes, in terms of the way others are responding to. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, the Most High knows all, sees all. He knows the very intent. And there are some things we must be mindful of. While there are ministers who want to sugarcoat things and say we're all going to be saved, or we're going to all be out of here, or we're going to all be in the promised land, that's a lie, O Yashar'al. That's a lie. It is time for us to seek to discern what the Most High Father, in the name of Yahusha, is saying to us individually, and for us to yield to what he's saying and accept whatever he is directing us to do. But the key is making sure, O Yashar'al, the key is making sure that you know indeed that this is the instruction from the Almighty Father. My brothers and sisters, as it relates to outbreaks, weights, and measures, it starts out with this spread of diseases and famine, these plagues. And these, to Yashar'al, are a result of the fruit of rebellion against the Almighty Father. For our discipline, we will grow to understand how we're to respond. To the wicked, these are actions that reflect promised vengeance from the Almighty Father. You see, my brothers and sisters, there is a difference. Seek to discern and understand. My brothers and sisters, as there are outbreaks, the first actions that we see many across the world is to try to quarantine the sick, to try to lower the number of people that can be infected and possibly killed by this virus or these viruses. Although COVID-19, the coronavirus, this specific strand is spreading across the world, Ebola, measles, bubonic, whatever it's called. There are other plagues. The bottom line is there are other plagues and diseases, cancer, diabetes, muscular dystrophy. There are all types of other, pneumonia, diseases spreading. The coronavirus is the crown of the diseases, my brothers and sisters. And I have dedicated time to build a message informing you that this crown of diseases is trying to prohibit us from being restored with the crown that the Most High has given us, the dominion which the Most High has given us. And that's another segment. What I want to say to you, Yashar'al, is this. It starts out with quarantines, trying to contain. But it is my opinion, as well as my belief. I am compelled to believe that the Almighty Father has opened my eyes to see this is a contagion that man cannot encapsulate in quarantines. This is a contagion that man cannot quarantine everyone that is infected. So the next step that man will do, pray and watch, O Yashar'al, the very wealthy, the ultra rich, the privileged, many leaders will start forming compounds. Some of them have already pre-built underground bunkers, condominiums, living spaces in the Colorado mountains, in the Ozark Mountains, and other mountains throughout the world. Some have already built safe havens. These ultra rich, privileged, and leaders of the world have planned for this. So since they cannot quarantine everyone, watch. They're going to begin to disappear. Some we might not even see. Who's aware of all the CEOs that's been resigning recently? Do you think that they're just resigning for the fun of it? Some of them are resigning because they're going to their safe place, whether it be acreage away from congestion or whether it be prepared bunkers in the mountains. We are about to witness, O Yashar'al, when they begin to say only the strong survive. Those outside of the inner court, those outside of the body of Yashar'al, will begin to form militia groups to protect what they believe is theirs. They will be those who are left outside of the bunkers, outside of these safe zones that the world leaders have constructed for themselves. They're going to leave the weak, the poor, and the unaware to fight and fend for themselves. While at the same time, the one world government will usher in their plan to bring about the anti-Messiah and false prophet, a one world government. While those who are behind the scenes leading and instructing and hiding in their bunkers will not be found. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, to you who are drawn by the Almighty Father, we will begin to discern the task that we are assigned. We will witness as people begin to run and try to acquire vaccines, thinking this is going to protect them from the wrath of the Almighty Father, from his vengeance. They're sadly mistaken. We who are his children, we who must fulfill the 144,000, 12,000 Hebrews from each of the 12 tribes of Yashar'al, and great multitude as written in Revelation 7th chapter. We who must fulfill that, while they scrambling and going about, let us identify those drawn by the Almighty Father with specific tasks and duties, and let us draw close to one another. For some reason, my brothers and sisters, it seemed to be less talk. It seemed to be less talk among brothers and sisters of what is to be done. There are some brothers even saying, don't come to me. I don't have the money. I don't have the wherewithal to grant you sanctuary. I say to you, Yashar'al, ask questions. Fear not what man can do, and do not seek to preserve these earthen vessels. Seek what the Most High is ordering you to do. Prepare, O Yashar'al. There will be movement across the face of the earth. Movement of the wicked and movement of the set apart. My instructions are to you who are called and drawn by the Almighty Father. There will be movement. We will come together in mass numbers. We will begin to witness the power and might of the Almighty Father as it relates to covering and protecting us from diseases. Those who must accomplish various end-time protocols and tasks. Outbreaks, weights, and measures. It's to bring your attention that there are thresholds, soon and very soon, certain thresholds. In other words, as the diseases spread, as more diseases, and not just the coronavirus, as deadly and fatal diseases begin to spread, there's an amount of spreading that soon people will say, I better get my act together. I better ask myself, is this the city, state, province, country I'm supposed to be in? And if not, when am I supposed to start journeying? In what direction, with whom, and how? Am I being called, charged to lead? Or am I being called to confirm the leaders that have been chosen? We must ask ourselves these questions, O Yashar'al. Soon and very soon, the outbreaks, the weights, the measures, even as it relates to civil unrest, even as it relates to the economy. There are weights and measures. There are numbers that will hit, that will cause people to start moving, doing something. Some led by the Most High, some not. Let's get into some scriptures, O Yashar'al. As I continue, I want to bring your attention to Matthew chapter 24. Many of you are familiar with this, so I won't read verse by verse, but I want to bring your attention. I have posted Matthew 24, 4 through 10, but I have posted with bold and underlined the 27th verse, the 7th verse in the 24th chapter. The 7th and the 8th verse, I've highlighted it. Well, not highlighted. I made it bold and underlined. It says, for nation shall rise against nation and reign against reign, and there shall be scarcities of food, deadly diseases, and earthquakes in places. And all these are the beginning of birth pains. The strategies, when scarcities emerge, scarcities of food will cause war and fighting. Scarcities of food will cause battles. Deadly disease will cause fighting. Civil unrest, my brothers and sisters, chaos. Pray and watch, for earthquakes will also begin to ramp up. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, as our economy nears the brink of collapse, as society faces civil unrest due to widespread diseases, with the crown disease being COVID-19, tipping the iceberg, so to speak. With all these that are occurring, we will witness an outbreak of people trying to save their own neck. But Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, discern the words from the Almighty Father and seek to understand the plans that are ahead. Let me continue. All too often, my brothers and sisters, what we see are the rich and wealthy with plans that they may not make known. I even witnessed set-apart brothers saying that I'm not going to make my plan known to anyone, not on no dang on social media. But I said this before and I say again, did Moses and Aaron hide the instructions from the Most High and just give them to the elders? Was it secretly coveted to protect them and their own family? I say not. The words went before Yashar'al, and there was a mass exodus out of Egypt. And I say there are those who have plans and who are members of a greater plan, whose actions may be to keep it secret and private. But there are also those with plans that are made known to let those of the magnitude of the great multitude, to let those who will be among the 144,000 know that the Almighty Father's plan is being made known and will be protected. In society, all too often, the poor are the ones that have been left behind, neglected. And I say in these outbreaks, when the weights and measures come, when they start talking about it's not enough hospital beds, when they start talking about it's not enough medication, when they start talking about it's not enough food, when they start talking about it's not enough safe places for people to be, outbreaks, not only of disease, outbreak of people acting in desperation will be in such a way that it will disregard the poor. I say to you, O Yashar'al, pay attention. Consider these words in James chapter 2, verse 1 through 4. My brothers, do not hold the belief of our Master Yahusha Messiah, the Master of esteem, with partiality. For if there should come into your meeting place a man with gold rings in a splendid robe, and there should also come in a poor one dressed in rags, and you pay attention to the one wearing the splendid robe and say to him, you sit here in a good place, and say to the poor one, you stand there or sit here by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with wicked thoughts? My brothers and sisters, just as people tend to look at the wealthy, the rich, the well-dressed, the well-groomed with disdain, I say to you, you who are poor will rise up richer than you can imagine. You will rise up with the richness that the Almighty Father has given you in life everlasting. And those who treat you with disdain, those who think they can discard you, you, O Yashar'al, set apart children of the Almighty Father, who are among the poor or the wealthy, we have our position, and we will realize that together we are wealthy in Yahuah. By the Almighty Father, we are made wealthy and rich through Yahusha Mashyach. Rich will take on a different meaning as we shed that programming that we have that tell us that wealth is about money and fine stones and jewels. Richness will be, my brothers and sisters, the set-apart life that the Almighty Father has given us. We will also see as economic conditions begin to deteriorate, Yashar'al, where food and fresh water will be the new currency. Pray and watch, my brothers and sisters. Do not be dismayed. Do not fight against the wealthy or even those who form militia groups. Draw to your own. Draw to Yashar'al. Draw to the set-apart children. Let us draw together and begin to prepare, if not start moving in the direction that the final exodus dictates, or our final positions dictate, as instructed by the Almighty Father. Let me continue, my brothers and sisters. It is important. These things are real. When the need becomes too great, then self-preservation begins for the unlearned, the undiscerning, the rebellious, and the wicked. Acts of the rich will produce an only the rich survive mode. Instead of rounding up the infected, the tables will turn and shelters for the rich and privileged will begin to take priority, and we will begin to see many of them disappear as they go into hiding or protection, as they would call it. Make no mistake, O Yashar'al, let them be. Focus on knowing how to vet one another and identify those being chosen, have been chosen, those being drawn by the Almighty Father, and draw to them. Let us draw to one another. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, this may seem unreal. To some, it will become real. I cannot stress enough. Believe end times will prove placement for those chosen by Abba Yahuah. We will begin to discern where we're supposed to be. And I believe for those in the Western Hemisphere, time will come when you will begin to move towards the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. For I believe that's where the exit point on the Western Hemisphere for the chosen of the Almighty Father, before going across the Atlantic Ocean towards the Promised Land, with the central point being the true Mount Sinai, currently known as Jabal al-Al, situated in the northwest quadrant of what is now known as the Saudi Arabia. Make no mistake, the Almighty Father will gather his children, and we will begin to identify those who will support the gathering, those who will be links for the gathering, and those who will be ordered to shelter in place and still echo the strength of set-apartness to those who are left behind or caught in the middle of diseases or destruction. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, make no mistake, end times are here. Let me read the following, my brothers and sisters. Joel chapter 2, verse 27 and 29 reads, "And you shall know that I am in the midst of Yashar'al, and that I am Yahuah, your Almighty One, and there is no one else. And my people shall never be put to shame. I pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men dream dreams, your young men see visions." And I'm jumping to the 29th verse and said, "And also on the male servants and on the female servants, I shall pour out my spirit in those days." My brothers and sisters, when they say all flesh, I am compelled to believe that the scriptures speak to the children of Yahuah. So when he's speaking to the children of Yahuah, he's talking about all his children. It doesn't mean everybody that's physically alive. He's speaking to those whom are his, those who are in the outer court, those who are not a child of the Almighty Father. Do not concern yourself with, my brothers and sisters. Too much time is being wasted concerning ourselves with those who have no intentions of serving the Almighty Father. Let us press into set-apartness with focus. Let us learn to believe and trust the living word from the Almighty Father. Let us consider his promises to his children. Let us consider the life and what is said. Let us begin to ask ourselves, what does it resemble to witness the Spirit of Yahuah being poured out upon us? Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, if I ask you questions such as, do the Almighty Father change? Many of us are aware that there are scriptures that inform us that he changed not. And I say this to say, my brothers and sisters, just as there were watchmen in days of old, so too are there watchmen among us today. And let me give you a sample of some instructions to a watchman. Consider the words in Ezekiel 33, verse 1 through 7. Ezekiel 33, verse 1 through 7. And the word of Yahuah came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of your people. And you shall say to them, when I bring the sword upon a land, and the people of the land shall take a man from their borders, and shall make him their watchman, and he sees the sword coming upon the land, and shall blow with the shofar, and shall warn the people. Then whoever shall hear the voice of the shofar, and shall not take warning, if the sword comes and take him away, his blood is on his own head. He heard the voice of the shofar, but he did not take warning. His blood is on himself. But he who takes warning shall deliver his being. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and shall not blow with the shofar, and the people shall not be warned, and the sword comes and take any being from among them, he is taken away in his crookedness. And his blood I require at the watchman's hand. And you, son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Yashar'al. And you shall hear a word from my mouth, and you shall warn them for me. I say to you, O Yashar'al, there are watchmen among us. Seek to discern their identities. Seek to discern the words that they have presented and are presenting and will present. You see, my brothers and sisters, what's different about outbreaks, weights, and measures now is that we are reaching tipping points, thresholds, where it is getting beyond man's ability to weigh and measure and countermeasure and present the solutions that they believe is necessary. But we who are set apart, we have instructions, living instructions. We have the living scriptures as they are made alive. And we know that the plan of the Almighty Father will indeed unfold before our very eyes, we who are physically alive still. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, do the math. Add the nCoV, the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19, to all other existing diseases. And we will see we are reaching the tipping point. And soon there will be civil unrest, chaos, and increasing death. Add them all up. Currently, my brothers and sisters, as of March 5th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, according to worldometers.info, the number that was infected as of 9:30 Eastern Time, March 5th, was 96,793 individuals. And the number of deaths was 3,308. In the U.S., 162 infected with 11 deaths. In over 60 countries worldwide, these numbers are growing fluidly as I post, my brothers and sisters. And it is believed that these numbers are 100 times that. That more than likely there's over 1 million people infected and more than 300,000 deaths. Now, am I trying to bring fear-mongering? Consider this, my brothers and sisters. Just hold on a second. Just consider this. If you don't have enough equipment to test everybody, if there are millions of people going untested, if there's individuals in fear of being quarantined, locked up as a petri dish like they were on Diamond Princess, how many people do you think are running to hospitals if they're already telling you hospitals only have a limited number of beds, a limited number of equipment? So just because they haven't tested anyone, what do you think is happening, my brothers and sisters? These numbers are alarmingly much larger than what I have posted here. For you, O Yashar'al, take heed to what the Almighty Father is saying through his watchmen, through his leaders, through his servants, through his children. Take heed to the need to humble and get under the blood of the Lamb. Seek forgiveness and reproof. Quit trying to protect ego and pride. Quit trying to build what you would call my ministry or your ministry or get your own. Do what is ordered of you by the Almighty Father through his set-apart spirit. Seek to discern the true chosen leaders, the true chosen ones who are giving living instructions as to what must and will come to be, O Yashar'al. Tipping points have begun for some, and will enlarge for others. Make no mistake, my brothers and sisters. This is a time when many individuals are asking themselves, is a time coming where I should stay at home? Who has given thought to, even if you choose to stay at home and shelter in place, that when chaos break out, people will break in your house, in your apartment, with you present, looking for food and fresh water. Chaos, my brothers and sisters, civil unrest. Pray and watch, O Yashar'al. Refuge is something that is paramount. And the Most High has promised to move and gather his children from the four corners of the earth. He has promised to strengthen us. He has instructed us to walk in the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, filled with walking in obedience to his living instructions. Let me present some scriptures for those of you who say he's just doing a lot of talking and need black and white. Hear these words, O Yashar'al. Proverbs 14:26 say, in the fear of Yahuah is strong trust, and his children have a place of refuge. My brothers and sisters, that place of refuge is trusting what the Most High has promised. Deuteronomy 8:3, I meditate on it each day. It says, and he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuah. Every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuah determines whether we physically live or not. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, let Deuteronomy 8:3 marinate, stir within you each day as intense times ramp up. Be mindful of 2 Corinthians 4:16 that say, therefore we do not lose heart. But even if our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed day by day. Renewed because we are discerning that the plan of the Almighty Father is unfolding. We are discerning that the days are coming close to where we will indeed step out of these earthen vessels and put on what is incorruptible and live forever with Yahusha Mashyach. Consider 1 Corinthians 15:52 and 54, my brothers and sisters. In the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible has to put on incorruption, and this mortal to put on immortality. And when the corruptible has put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall come to be the word that has been written. Death is swallowed up in overcoming. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, you may be tired of hearing these words. You may be anxious for the Most High to come quickly, but there is work to be done. I can't stress enough, my brothers and sisters, the need to prepare to witness being moved, to prepare to be one who is moved by the power and might of the Almighty Father. For some, we will move out of obedience quicker than others. We will be as first fruits, first responders. And some, we will drag our feet, but movement comes. Let us learn how to vet and ask questions before we start just moving because we say that group have the best looking Hebrew garments, or their groups appears to have it all together, or because it's so many of them, I'll be safe. At the blink of an eye, massive deaths could happen. At the opening of the ground for earthquakes, a sinkhole, many could die. Don't use the protocols that man have programmed us to think that by getting with just massive numbers, that's going to be safety. The scripture said in a multitude of counsel there is safety. It's referring to wise, set-apart counsel that's walking in obedience to the Almighty Father. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, prepare to witness people being moved. Prepare for your footsteps to change their trajectory. Come with me, O Yashar'al, as I read the following. Governments have plans, but make no mistake, the Almighty Father has plans for his children. Pray and watch. When the numbers get greater than the government's ability to quarantine, as I mentioned, the rich will go into hiding, some, many. Make no mistake, my brothers and sisters, deliverance come. Consider these words, of which I presented before in other recordings. Amos 9:8 and 9:9. Now remember, the Most High does not change. So although these words literally could be speaking of something that occurred years ago, I ask yourself, will we see such things occur again? So keep that in mind as I read Amos 9:8 and 9. Look, the eyes of the Master Yahuah are on the sinful reign, and I should destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Yahuah. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Yashar'al among all the nations as one sifts with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. Who has considered what these words will resemble during end times? My brothers and sisters, remember there will be widespread destruction and death. But never forget, deliverance come. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, do not stick your head in the sand. Do not turn away from what's happening. There are those who say, I don't fear the coronavirus. And you shouldn't. But fear Yahuah. For he may place you in a position where the coronavirus attacks your earthen vessel. So will your words be in fearing the Almighty Father Yahuah? In spite of this sickness, I will still praise him. I will still seek to worship him, and I will still seek to do his will. Fear Yahuah, to know the instructions, to receive the knowledge on how to deal with whatever befalls you, me, us. My brothers and sisters, it's time to understand the strength and power of the inward man joined with the power and might of the Almighty Father. It's time to recognize how to look physical death in the face and cry out to the Almighty Father, I will still worship and obey you. I will still pursue your will, and I will still shout all praises to you, Abba Yahuah, in the name of Yahusha. Remember, there will be a final exodus, my brothers and sisters. From the four corners of the earth, there will be those who will be drawn to a focal point, a point that will prove to be where the promised land lies, rests, and awaits us, our return. And like I said, I believe that axle, that central point, would be Mount Sinai, currently known as Jabal Al-Laws. And soon and very soon, my brothers and sisters, we will witness the power and might to come. I talked about 2 Thessalonians 2:7, my brothers and sisters, how it says, he that restraineth is what's holding back the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist. The wicked one knows that. And as you see the one world government and things coming about for a cashless society, as you see economic collapse, as you see famine and diseases, know this, O Yashar'al, the call to gather is going out. The call to unity is going out, and the discipline has begun. The judgment in the house of the Almighty Father has begun. And we will begin to see evidence of such. For the obstacles that stand in the way will be removed. There will be teachers, brothers, mores, pastors, and bishops, some that will get sick, and some will get sick and physically die. And some will become so weak, they will yield to the chosen ones that are directed by the Almighty Father. And some will repent and understand the power of the blood of the Lamb and rise up anew with instructions to be strong leaders, led by those who are directing them, or as the Most High is directing those who he has chosen to lead. There will be a merging of set-apart children. There will be a gathering massive in numbers. In spite of all that is unfolding, my brothers and sisters, begin to understand what is expected, how to vet, how to examine, what questions to ask. Cannot stress it enough. Pray and watch the proof, the evidence that is about to unfold. Let me read some more, O Yashar'al, as I get close to an end of this segment. There will be widespread movement and change. Though we don't ask ourselves what are the processes and details to expect, that's not going to stop the deliverance that's coming, my brothers and sisters. I've read these verses before, and so I would just paraphrase. Isaiah 11:12, which talks about being gathered from the four corners of the earth. And Matthew 19:29 and 30, which talks about leaving brothers, sisters, father, mother, wife, children, or lands for Yahusha's sake. And it lets us know that there are those that will be first, those who are first that will be last, and the last will be first. There's an order of things. There are details and processes in what we read, Yashar'al. So many of us don't want to discuss the details and processes. So many of us don't want to discuss that we might have to leave mother, brother, father, sister, daughter, son behind. In some cases, my brothers and sisters, the left behind doesn't mean that they're not going to go to the promised land or they're not going to be where they're supposed to be. Sometimes the left behind is in walking, if you took one step forward, the rest of your body is behind. The second step follows the first step. You see, in movement, my brothers and sisters, there's structure. All of Yashar'al didn't just beam out of Egypt or Mitzrayim all at once. They would just beam. There were lines. There was structure. Believe it or not, in Ezekiel's will describe the order and structure for set apart Yashar'al as we begin to move in the various directions that take us towards the promised land, and that will be the structure we will have until we reach the promised land. And then upon reaching it, it would be like the wheels of Ezekiel come as one wheel, wheels within a wheel. There's a structure in that, and I've spoken on that before. Read it, my brothers and sisters, and seek to understand. Some people believe that means flying saucers. But if the Most High changed not, have we seen flying saucers coming to and fro, literally picking up people and bringing them back? Well, I haven't. And I'm not compelled to believe that's the way it's going to come to be. Yashar'al, unity comes for the obedient, set-apart children of Yahuah. There will be diverse nationalities made one by Yahusha Mashyach. Isaiah 11:12 will take on its full meaning with evidence and proof. The 7th chapter of Revelation will prove that those that are sealed by the blood of the Lamb Yahusha. Just as the blood was over the doorposts and saved Yashar'al before they were delivered out of Mitzrayim, so we will witness the blood of the Lamb over our foreheads, preserving those who must fulfill the things that are expected to come to be and will be fulfilled. Revelation 7 chapter, 144,000 Hebrews, along with a great multitude. And I say again, though the world population is approaching 8 billion, the scriptures tell us that close to 2/3 of the population will be destroyed, will face death. But I say to you, when you compare the world population to those that are saved and who have found favor to be physically alive and for the physical return of Yahusha Mashyach, we will witness the favor of the Almighty Father. And the work that is to be done between now and then is hard work. It's tough decisions we must make. Our mental state, our emotions will be challenged. But those who are chosen to fulfill what must come to be, to witness the promises that must come to be, to witness discipline, to witness his vengeance, his wrath. Those of us who are physically alive to see that, we will be strengthened and we will endure until the very end. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, this is real. And in this segment of judgment, warnings, and instructions, outbreaks, weights and measures. Outbreaks, meaning as diseases break out and swell up in numbers, it challenges us to respond in many ways. Weights and measures, meaning there are tipping points. There are points when we can take so much before we start acting. There are weights and measures that when we become filled and strengthened, we have been developed and strengthened with the instructions that the Most High has given us. Then we step out, we break out and do what is expected of us. For some, the weights and measures would be, I can't take it.
These came back from a search.
I got to do something. My brothers and sisters, it is so important. It is so important that we recognize what is expected. I tease sometimes because I call this phone an eavesdropping phone. I make no mistake, my brothers and sisters, in all this technology, we know they're collecting data. And I say to the world leaders, I know you're waiting for that messenger of the Almighty Father Yahuah. I know you're waiting, world leaders, for the chosen leaders of Yashar'al to rise up and demonstrate the power and might of the Almighty Father and gather the children of Yashar'al that must fulfill what is necessary to get out of your way so that you can lift up your anti-Messiah and your false prophet and bring world order as you see it. I know you're waiting. And you have the algorithms, you have the technology. And make no mistake, I am aware that AI, artificial intelligence, is the product of programmers collecting the thought processes and decision processes of many leaders and putting them into algorithms and put it as artificial intelligence. I understand what that is. And to you, O Yashar'al, understand this. We are the restraint. And as you see the world coming to many crises, the restraints must be moved enough to fulfill what is written that will bring about the release of what has been foretold years ago. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, a sense of urgency is now. Not falling for the word panic, a sense of urgency. You see, for the things that the Most High ordered, there are copycats that are wicked. In urgency, some will call it panicking. And then there are those among us who are just as calm and collective and saying, oh, I'm not falling for the hype and I'm not going to respond and I did what I'm supposed to do and patting themselves on the back. But not charging Yashar'al to seek to discern what the Almighty Father is saying to you, to us, and how we will come together. There's not much talk of movement, but it's coming. It's coming, O Yashar'al. Pray and watch. On that note, he who take heed to the words of this message, the message that is in these words, may find themselves in a better position. Pray and watch. I say to you, O Yashar'al, if you believe there's any life to what I'm saying before you, consider subscribing. Consider contributing in a way to get this message out to others who are tired of going from community to community, who are tired of going from camp to camp. Yes, believe it or not, someone you know is tired of the noise. Someone you know, my brothers and sisters, is tired of all the confusion and conflict, and wants to identify what it is the Most High Father Yahuah is saying through his set-apart spirit sent in Yahusha's name. And we will connect, we who are drawn by him, to Yahusha Mashyach. On that note, my brother, my sister, share these words as you believe you are stirred to do. I salute your patience, your tolerance, your pursuit of set-apartness, and my prayer is that you grow strong in discerning the voice of the Spirit of Yahusha, and that you respond with all precision, correctness, accuracy. You, me, for we will witness the promises of the Most High unfold before our very eyes. Until next time, O Yashar'al, I bid you, Shalum.